All right, everyone, settle in. Tonight we're diving into the rowdy, smoky, and slightly sticky world of the medieval tavern. This was the unsung heart of every town, the unofficial news center, and often the only place where a knight, a farmer, and a bard could all get equally drunk and equally robbed. It wasn't just a place to drink. It was a vibrant hub where danger, laughter, and disease mingled freely beneath a thatched roof. So, before you get too comfortable, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely appreciate what I'm creating here. And I'd love to know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you. It's always genuinely fascinating to see our audience connecting from all corners of the globe. Now go ahead and dim those lights, perhaps switch on a fan for that gentle background hum, and let's smoothly transition into tonight's journey together. You've trudged through a muddy street that smells like a blend of horse, smoke, and questionable soup. It's raining, of course, or has just finished, so everything is slick, including your only pair of shoes. You're tired, you're hungry, and you've narrowly avoided being run over by a cart full of turnip twice. You desperately need a drink. So, how do you locate a tavern in a medieval town? There are no glowing neon signs, no Yelp reviews, and certainly no GPS. What you do have are your ears. Just follow the noise. Somewhere past the blacksmith's forge and the fishmonger shouting about his fresh river eels, you'll hear a chorus of laughter, boisterous shouts, and someone aggressively singing about a goose. And there it is, a crooked wooden building, leaning slightly as if even the architecture has had one too many. Hanging above the door is a wooden sign, barely legible, with a crude painting that might be a barrel or a bear, or perhaps both. Regardless, this is your destination. Welcome to the tavern. The front step is slick with ale, and as you push open the heavy iron-hinged door, it lets out a creak so long and dramatic it could qualify as its own form of entertainment. Instantly, warm air laden with the rich scent of smoke, wet wool, stale beer, and mystery meat hits your face like a drunken handshake. You've made it. Inside, the ceiling is low enough to make tall men duck and drunk men frequently bump their heads. The floor is literally dirt, not metaphorically so. Though someone has scattered straw in an attempt to create an illusion of cleanliness, it offers no actual improvement. There are no private booths, no waiters offering menus, and no such thing as quiet conversation. This is a medieval tavern, operating in only two modes, rowdy or closed due to fire. You spot an available spot on a lopsided bench near the hearth, but it's damp with something you prefer not to ask about. Someone nearby is vehemently arguing about a stolen chicken. Another individual is passed out cold, a ladle still clutched in their hand. A one-eyed dog gnaws on a bone beneath a table, acting as if it pays rent there. And this, my friend, is just the entrance. You've only just arrived, and already it smells like a night to remember, or perhaps one you'll desperately try to forget. As the heavy tavern door slams shut behind you, the darkness envelops your senses like a damp wool blanket. Warm, uncomfortable, and slightly suspicious. Your eyes slowly adjust. Candlelight flickers against soot-stained walls, casting dancing shadows that make even the chairs appear ready for a brawl. The hearth blazes fiercely in the far corner, serving simultaneously as a heat source and an open flame hazard. Smoke lazily drifts through the air, not quite escaping through the chimney, which might in fact be obstructed by a dead crow. But what strikes you most forcefully isn't the cacophony or the heat, it's the smell. A medieval tavern's scent is less aromatic and more akin to emotional trauma. The dominant notes are stale ale, warm, sour, and liberally splashed across every available surface. Beneath that, you detect sweat, years of it, human, equine, and possibly something mythical. Add a hint of moldy bread, damp straw, and a faint whisper of boiled onions, and you have a blend no perfumer has ever dared to bottle. The tables are deeply carved with years of initials, crude drawings, and knife scars. They wobble with a peculiar stubborn pride. The benches creak under the collective weight of muddy boots, thick cloaks, and questionable decisions. The floor, genuinely dirt as promised, is layered with straw intended to absorb spills, spit, and the occasional unconscious customer. You step cautiously. One wrong move and your foot might sink into something with a texture best left undescribed. The crowd forms a living, breathing organism. Boisterous laughter erupts in one corner while two men heatedly dispute the price of a pig in another. A woman slams a mug down with such force that half her drink spills, and no one even flinches. A man at the adjacent table stares at you with the dazed expression of someone either engaged in profound thought or completely forgetting how chairs function. Someone nearby sneezes, causing the entire left side of the room to collectively lean away. And yet, despite this overwhelming assault on your modern sensibilities, there's something oddly welcoming here. The tavern is alive. It's rough, raw, and completely unfiltered, the medieval equivalent of a community hub, albeit one lacking hygiene and featuring approximately 400% more shouting. You find your seat. It's a bit damp, it's probably cursed, but for now, it's undeniably yours. At first glance, the tavern's layout appears as if someone arranged the furniture during an earthquake and then simply decided to leave it that way. There's no discernible blueprint, no designated bar area, no cozy, secluded booths in the back, just a sprawling, uneven distribution of tables, benches, barrels, and the occasional wooden crate repurposed as a seat. Everything is either too close together or too far apart, depending on your current level of intoxication. The hearth serves as the sole true centerpiece, a large open fire roaring against one wall, diligently providing warmth, light, and a substantial dose of indoor smoke inhalation. Around it, people cluster for comfort, like moths drawn to a flame, clutching their mugs. Those fortunate enough to secure the best seats monopolize the warmth, while those without them must rely on ale to compensate. The bar, if it can be called that, is typically just a thick wooden plank supported by two barrels, visibly sagging under the weight of jugs, mugs, and elbows. Behind it stands the tavern keeper, adeptly juggling tasks such as pouring drinks, shouting orders, and fixing a menacing glare on that one patron in the corner who still hasn't paid for last Tuesday's tab. There are no menus. You inquire about what's available and brace yourself for the answer, which is usually a succinct ale or shut up and wait. A narrow staircase, possibly original and definitely prone to splinters, leads to the upstairs rooms. If you squint, you might discern a boot hanging from one of the railing posts. No one is entirely certain if it's decorative or a grim warning. Some taverns include a back room. It might serve as storage, it might be a venue for illicit gambling, or it might be where the last person who insulted the barmaid was taken, never to be seen again. It's generally advisable not to inquire. The walls are perpetually stained with candle soot. The windows are covered with greasy cloth or animal hide. And every surface bears the thorough polish of countless elbows, boots, and spilled drinks from generations past. And perhaps a chicken. Somehow, despite the apparent chaos, or perhaps precisely because of it, the system functions. Everyone instinctively knows where to go, how to sit, when to shout, and when to duck. It's not organized, but it is undeniably alive. Every medieval tavern operates under the rule of a singular figure. And it's not the local lord or the tax collector. It's the tavern keeper. They may not wear a crown, but do not be deceived. This individual unequivocally runs the entire establishment. They are equal parts chef, server, accountant, impromptu babysitter, and enforcer of baroom justice. The tavern keeper is a one-person institution, and they tolerate no nonsense. If it's a man, he's likely built like a barrel with arms, grizzled, perpetually grumpy, and appears to be carved from cured meat and regrettable decisions. If it's a woman, and often it is, she is sharper than a blacksmith's file and possesses the ability to silence an entire room with a single piercing look. Regardless of gender, they have witnessed everything, heard far worse, and have undoubtedly cleaned blood out of straw before breakfast. They greet regulars with a curt nod, strangers with palpable suspicion, and troublemakers with a swift tankard to the head. Behind the bar, they meticulously keep mental tabs on who is paid, who owes money, and who has consumed 3 too many ales, accomplishing all of this without jotting anything down. Because while medieval literacy may be rare, tavern memory is terrifyingly precise. The tavern keeper dictates the entire atmosphere. If they are in a good mood, the place hums with joviality. If they are in a foul mood, you'd be wise to drink quickly and keep your jokes to yourself. They serve as the impartial referee in every argument, the judge in every cheating scandal, and the first to seize a club when a fight erupts. You absolutely do not mess with the tavern keeper. They also possess an encyclopedic knowledge of everything transpiring: who's in debt, who's engaged in an affair, who arrived in town under a false name. Need information? Bribe the barkeep. Need protection? Sit near them. Need a favor? You'd better hope you didn't break a mug last week. Some tavern keepers have a helper, a son, daughter, spouse, or an orphan they've reluctantly adopted and now compelled to carry barrels twice their own weight. These assistants dutifully deliver drinks, mop floors, and attempt not to spill anything or get trampled by intoxicated patrons. So while the tavern may initially appear chaotic, it is in fact a remarkably delicate ecosystem. And at its very center, commanding it all like a storm god in an apron, stands the one individual ensuring the ale flows and the roof doesn't collapse into a full-blown riot: the tavern keeper. So you finally settle onto a creaky bench, deftly dodging elbows and spilled stew. Your throat feels dry, your boots are damp, and it's time for the main event, the drink. But don't expect a wine list or a polished mug. This is a medieval tavern. Your choices are limited, lukewarm, and potentially life-threatening. Let's begin with the classic: ale. It's unfiltered, unpasteurized, and typically brewed in the cramped back room where the dog probably sleeps. It's thick, cloudy, and often contains various floaties, bits of grain, yeast, or possibly a fragment of the previous customer's mustache. It's not cold because there's no ice, and you certainly don't inquire about how long it's been fermenting in the barrel. You simply drink and hope for the best. Next up, mead, honey wine. Sounds rather sophisticated, doesn't it? In reality, it's sweet, potent, and occasionally prone to explosive fermentation. If the tavern keeper brewed it themselves, it might be delicious, or it might taste distinctly of regret and bee venom. It's usually served to nobles, wedding guests, or that one persistent bard who insists on being compensated in gold or mead. Then there's cider, crafted from apples that were either freshly picked or, more likely, have been lying on the ground for 3 weeks. It's sharp, tangy, and served in cracked mugs that may double as soup bowls by morning. It's the beverage of choice in orchard-rich regions, or for those who desire just enough alcohol to momentarily forget the pungent smell of the person seated beside them. Wine? Technically, yes. But unless you're in Southern Europe, or the nobility has graced the town with their presence, it's probably watered down, soured, and delivered with a side of palpable sarcasm. Fine wine is strictly reserved for lords, bishops, and the merchant who just sold 12 crates of salt. And water? That's a remarkably bold choice, as half the time it's teeming with invisible pathogens. Boiling water requires precious fuel, and genuinely clean wells are a rarity. That's precisely why even children consume ale. It's not about the intoxicating effect. It's about avoiding death from dysentery before reaching the age of 8. No one is precisely measuring shots or meticulously crafting cocktails here. You drink from mugs fashioned from wood, clay, or tin. Some may still contain remnants of last night's stew. You raise your mug, take a cautious sniff, and then sip. It's warm, it's bitter, and yet somehow it feels perfect. Because in the medieval tavern, if it's wet and won't kill you instantly, it's considered a fine vintage. So you've survived the drink, barely. Now your stomach growls insistently, reminding you that you haven't eaten since sunrise, and your last meal was primarily barley and sadness. Time to eat. But don't get excited. There's no menu, no dedicated waiter, and absolutely no one asking if you have any dietary restrictions. You don't order food in a medieval tavern. You inquire about what's available, then simply hope it's hot and only vaguely mysterious. The star of the tavern table is usually pottage, a thick stew made from whatever grains, vegetables, and questionable proteins were accessible that day. It's been simmering in the same pot since Monday, and today is Thursday. New ingredients are added daily. Nothing is ever removed. It's less a meal and more of a culinary time capsule. If meat happens to be involved, congratulations. It's probably rabbit, pigeon, or the unfortunate chicken that wandered too close to the fire. If it's game meat, it might be unexpectedly delicious, or it might be aged well beyond reason and seasoned liberally with desperation. Your bowl is crafted from wood or clay. Your spoon is either your own, or you resort to using your fingers. Most people carry their own knife, so eating is a bring-your-own-cutlery affair. And don't expect napkins, just the sleeve of your tunic or a communal rag that has witnessed things it will never forget. Bread is also consistently available. It's tough, dark, and heavy, more of a blunt weapon than a food item. If it's soft, it was baked today. If it's hard, it dates back to last week. Either way, it pairs surprisingly well with cheese that smells faintly of an old boot and has begun to develop its own unique personality. Sometimes there's salted fish, sometimes pickled eggs. Occasionally, you might even find a tavern offering a special, which is simply a fancier way of announcing, "We had an excess of this ingredient lying around." Flavor is often optional, and texture highly unpredictable. Still, in the flickering firelight, amidst the surrounding noise and with the warmth of food in your hands, it's not bad. It's filling. It's hot. And if you refrain from contemplating too deeply about what might be floating in your bowl, it might even offer a sense of comfort. You're not here for a gourmet dining experience. You're here to eat like a survivor. Once you've secured your seat, ideally one not currently impaled by a knife, you begin to notice the true entertainment, the people. A medieval tavern functions as the original social media feed, loud, chaotic, often half-true, and fully committed to rampant oversharing. To your left, a red-faced farmer, already deep into his fourth ale, is incessantly retelling the same story about his cow giving birth sideways. He slaps your shoulder mid-sentence as if you're a lifelong friend or a convenient replacement for the pig he usually drinks with. At the far end of the room, a hooded stranger sits in the shadows, slowly nursing a drink. He could be a runaway monk, a notorious bandit, or simply someone acutely uncomfortable with eye contact. Regardless, you won't be engaging in small talk with him unless you're eager to disappear behind the stables. Near the hearth, a soldier in battered armor is regaling a captivated group with exaggerated tales of battle. His narrative involves dragons, Frenchmen, and a talking sword. It's undeniably false. No one cares. His tankard remains full, and his audience is roaring with laughter. A loud and sweaty merchant is shouting prices for grain that no one has inquired about. He pulls gold coins from his pouch with the casual abandon of a man practically begging to be robbed by midnight. A pair of locals are intensely playing dice on a warped table. One of them is clearly cheating. The other is aware of it and allows it to happen, likely reserving the confrontation for when his ale supply is depleted. A bard strums in the corner, his voice cracking on the high notes of a love song that sounds suspiciously like something he just improvised. No one minds. He's wearing pants and he's in tune. That's already a significant improvement over last night's performer. Women move through the crowd. Some are tavern staff, others are conducting their own business. They are sharp-eyed, self-assured, and absolutely not to be trifled with. They'll flirt, laugh, or if provoked, might just knock your teeth in, depending on your tone. Children occasionally dart between legs, skillfully snatching leftover bread or stray coins. No one intervenes. It's simply part of the established rhythm. Everyone is observing, drinking, plotting, and pretending not to notice the man slumped under the table. This tavern isn't just a place for food and drink. It's a living, breathing performance. And tonight, you are an integral part of the cast. Forget lutes and ballads for a moment. The true soundtrack of a medieval tavern isn't a structured song. It's a raw symphony of chaos. It commences with the rhythmic clink of mugs, dozens of them, slamming against wooden surfaces in celebration, negotiation, or accidental misfire. Some clatter cheerfully, others shatter completely. Both events are met with enthusiastic cheers. Then comes the laughter. Deep, booming, belly laughter that sounds as if it escaped from a wild boar. Most of it makes absolutely no sense. A farmer chuckles heartily at his own joke about hay. A knight giggles uncontrollably at the word pottage. A monk wheezes spasmodically every time someone utters duck. You quickly learn not to question it. Voices layer over one another, each striving to be louder than the last, battling for dominance like roosters in a coop. There's arguing, enthusiastic storytelling, shouting about taxes, and at least one individual misquoting scripture to win a wager. The bartender yells orders while swatting persistent flies. A barmaid shouts defiantly at a man who dared to touch her. And someone incessantly repeats, "Another round," like a battle cry. In the corner, the bard, armed with a half-tuned lute and 3 missing strings, endlessly plays the same 4 chords, occasionally bursting into verses about lost love, unexpectedly found chickens, or noblemen who wore their pants backward. No one genuinely listens unless he begins singing about someone in the room, at which point the atmosphere becomes either highly entertaining or incredibly dangerous. Someone inevitably spills something. Someone burps with enough force to make the rafters tremble. Someone else tumbles off a bench and continues conversing from the floor, as if it were a deliberate seating choice. In the background, dogs bark. A goat bleats. Yes, why is there a goat? And chairs scrape across the dirt floor like thunderclaps echoing within a wooden cavern. It's far from peaceful, yet it possesses an odd, compelling rhythm. Occasionally the room falls silent, not by choice, but a sudden, inexplicable lull. It lasts precisely 3 seconds. Then someone heroically farts and the chaotic music instantly resumes. This isn't mere background noise. This is the very heartbeat of the tavern. Raw, rowdy, and relentlessly alive. If you listen closely enough, it begins to make a strange kind of sense, a harmony born from inherent disorder. And like the rest of the tavern, it only intensifies the longer you remain. Once the ale begins to flow freely and the stew starts to settle in your stomach, the tavern undergoes a transformation. It ceases to be merely a place for food and drink. It becomes a medieval casino, albeit one lacking velvet ropes and featuring significantly more shouting. Gambling reigns as the sport of the evening, and everyone participates, from weathered soldiers to barefoot boys wielding borrowed dice. There's no designated dealer, no pit boss, no formal regulation, just a cracked wooden table, a handful of copper coins, and the unspoken promise that someone is about to lose their dignity. Dice are the preferred game, carved from bone, wood, or whatever readily available material was at hand. They clatter across tabletops like rolling thunder, each toss followed by a medley of cheers, groans, and fervent accusations of witchcraft. No one genuinely trusts the dice, yet everyone uses them. Then there are cards, if you happen to be in a more cultured part of town, thick, hand-painted, worn smooth at the edges, and invariably missing 1 or 2. The rules shift based on whoever happens to be explaining them. Sometimes you're striving for the highest number, other times you're matching symbols or simply inventing the rules as you go. It's akin to poker, but with more frequent slapping. Wagers vary wildly, ranging from money to mugs to actual livestock. Yes, someone once wagered a goat. Someone else bet their boots. And another individual even wagered their own freedom for the night. Spoiler, he lost. The regulars are remarkably slick. They shuffle quickly, roll slowly, and smile a little too broadly. Cheating? Of course. It constitutes half the entertainment. A concealed die here, a subtly marked card there, a mysteriously timed cough when the lucky player leans in. If you win big, you'd be wise to buy a round or risk being physically assaulted. If you lose spectacularly, you smile, pretend it was intentional, and slowly inch your chair back towards the door. Side games also spontaneously erupt. Arm wrestling, intense thumb wars, and the perpetually popular who can drink the most without falling over competition. The victor earns enthusiastic applause. The loser earns a night sleeping beneath the table and a headache that persists until the next market day. But even when the rules are unclear and the stakes are absurd, the energy is undeniably addictive. Because in a medieval tavern, luck isn't just a game. It's a high-stakes gamble with your purse, your pride, and quite possibly your trousers. As the night deepens and the tavern fills with a humid warmth, a new form of performance emerges. One crafted from words, music, and confident nonsense. This is story time, medieval style. A bard clears his throat in the corner, gently plucking at a half-tuned lute, its strings squeaking like old boots. He's missing a few teeth, but none of his self-assurance. With a dramatic flourish, he launches into a ballad of heartbreak and heroism, a tale about a knight who tragically fell in love with a mermaid and nobly drowned while reciting poetry. No one believes him, yet everyone listens anyway. That's the way it operates here. Truth is optional, entertainment is paramount. Around the tables, others join in. Not professional bards, just patrons emboldened by ale and a compelling tale to tell. One man swears he once wrestled a bear and lived to drink about it. Another claims he witnessed a witch transform a cow into a goat. A third adamantly insists he's distantly related to Charlemagne through his mother's cousin's side. Everyone's story commences with, "You won't believe this, but..." And they're entirely correct. We don't, but we want to believe. Boasts metamorphose into ballads, mishaps transform into myths. Someone tells a joke so terribly bad that it loops back around to being genuinely funny. Someone else recites a poem, likely plagiarized directly from a monk's scroll. The room responds with claps, hoots, or hurled bread, depending on the perceived quality or quantity of the performance. If you're fortunate, a traveling skald or minstrel might be passing through. Professionals who journey from town to town, exchanging music for coins, meals, and occasionally a warm place to sleep indoors. Their songs are polished, their tales lengthy, and their ability to incite a crowd dangerously effective. But even they understand the golden rule of tavern tales. Never allow facts to ruin a good story. In this smoke-filled room, with the fire crackling and mugs sloshing, storytelling is more than mere entertainment. It's a cherished tradition. It's a vital connection. It's how you forge friendships, acquire enemies, and occasionally find a lifelong drinking companion. By midnight, half the tavern is passionately reenacting the story of the one-legged knight who bravely fought off 6 highwaymen with only a ladle. You laugh, you cheer, you momentarily forget it's all fabricated. Because in a medieval tavern, every liar becomes a legend, provided the story is compelling enough. As the night deepens and the ale continues to flow, something distinct shifts in the air, a kind of boozy boldness. The bard is halfway through his 3rd song about unfaithful shepherdesses, and suddenly everyone feels a surge of romance. Welcome to medieval flirting. Subtlety has clearly abandoned the building. It begins with sustained eye contact, or at least one eye slightly squinting through a mead-induced haze. A man with only 2 remaining teeth leans across a bench and slurs, "My lady, your beauty burns brighter than the hearth itself." She responds by accurately hurling a bread crust at his forehead. The room erupts in cheers. Others attempt their luck more gently, offering refilled mugs, clumsy compliments, or awkward offers to help carry a bowl of stew to prevent it from spilling. Spoiler, it inevitably still spills. If you're a woman in the tavern, whether staff, guest, or traveling merchant, you're likely accustomed to fending off at least 3 aspiring poets, 2 challenging arm wrestlers, and 1 persistent man who tries to impress you by precariously balancing a knife on his nose. Sometimes these attempts succeed. More often, it results in a black eye or an empty purse. For those genuinely seeking companionship, taverns offer more than just flirtation. Courtesans skillfully work the room with practiced ease, discerning who possesses wealth, who possesses charm, and who will undoubtedly pass out before reaching the stairs. Transactions are discreet, but the underlying implications are abundantly clear. Jealous lovers? Oh, absolutely. Nothing ignites a tavern brawl faster than a stolen glance, a wandering hand, or a husband catching his wife laughing a little too heartily at the bard's off-color joke about bishops. Tables are overturned, mugs are swiftly weaponized, a bench breaks in half, yet again. And yet, somewhere amidst all this chaos, genuine sparks of connection ignite. A shy baker's daughter and a traveling stonemason share laughter over a communal bowl of stew. 2 intoxicated farmers bond over a mutual, profound hatred of turnips. A monk accidentally flirts with a nun. Love, or something closely resembling it, manages to survive even in the rowdiest corners. Because in the medieval tavern, romance is an equal blend of charm, chance, and the crucial ability to avoid falling face first into your bowl mid-sentence. You might win a heart, you might earn a painful slap. Either way, you're certainly going to remember the encounter, or at least hear about it in vivid detail the next morning. It was bound to happen. Perhaps someone accidentally spilled a drink. Maybe someone accused another of cheating at dice. Perhaps 2 individuals simultaneously claimed the same bench, and neither was willing to back down. Or maybe someone uttered an unfortunate remark about another's mother, favorite goat, or the quality of their soup. The specific reason doesn't truly matter. Suddenly, it's on. The tavern, moments ago a blur of music and clinking mugs, instantly transforms. A stool flies through the air. A tankard crashes to the floor. Someone shouts, "Hold my bread!" and lunges over a bench with all the grace of a drunken catapult. No one appears surprised. In fact, most patrons don't even cease drinking. A bar fight in the Middle Ages isn't a rare occurrence. It's practically an anticipated feature. And while it might sound terrifying, it's usually more comically chaotic than genuinely deadly. People swing wildly, often missing their targets, stumbling, and landing unceremoniously in someone's dinner. Hair is pulled, beards are grabbed, shirts are torn. The tavern keeper roars like a battlefield general, wielding a ladle in one hand and a formidable club in the other. Occasionally, someone will spontaneously join the fray, having no idea why, simply seeing action and leaping in fists first. Others place informal bets, cheer enthusiastically, or merely slide their mugs out of the immediate splash zone. Weapons? They are rare. Most individuals are wise enough to avoid using them. Drawing a blade in a tavern can escalate a casual brawl into a full-blown tavern legend, and no one wants to be banned from the only place that serves hot food and warm ale. Eventually, someone collapses to the floor and remains there. Someone else stumbles into a wall and decides that's as good a place as any to sit and reflect on their life choices. The fight dissipates like a tavern candle, abruptly and without any formal conclusion. And here's the peculiar part. Once it's over, it's genuinely over. The combatants are separated, mugs are refilled, someone initiates a new song, and within 10 minutes, everyone is laughing again, including the person with the bleeding nose. No lingering grudges, no lawsuits, just bruises, new stories, and perhaps a fresh nickname, like One-Eyed Arnold or Benchbreaker Bill. Because in a medieval tavern, a good fight is simply part of a good night. It's messy, ridiculous, and strangely unifying. And if no one sustains too serious an injury, it's just another round of communal entertainment. So the brawl has subsided, the bard has passed out mid-ballad, and your stomach is comfortably full of mystery stew and slightly fermented cider. It's time to sleep, or at least attempt to. But don't expect a plush feather bed and lavender-scented linens. This is a medieval tavern, decidedly not a spa. If the tavern offers lodging, it's likely accessed via a creaky staircase. Upstairs, past slanted floors and beams low enough to test your skull's durability, the rooms are small, cold, and definitively shared. Privacy is a non-existent concept. You're sleeping shoulder to shoulder with strangers, some snoring like church bells, others loudly muttering in dreams, speaking languages you've never heard. Beds? Technically, yes. Most are straw-stuffed mattresses, thin, lumpy, and teeming with what medieval folks affectionately referred to as companions. You lie down fully clothed, boots still on, dagger conveniently tucked under your pillow, not for comfort but as a defensive strategy. Blankets are communal, and so are smells. And if someone indulged in garlic earlier, someone always indulged in garlic, its aroma will become an intimate part of your dreams. If you're too poor or too inebriated for an upstairs room, you sleep downstairs, on a bench, under a table, or simply curled up in a corner by the hearth, perhaps nestled beside a dog that may or may not belong to the tavern. You'll likely be stepped on, probably sneezed on, and potentially used as a convenient footrest. The tavern never truly falls silent. Even after the last mug is drained and the last fight haphazardly patched up, there's always someone muttering in their sleep, a log crackling in the fire, or a distant fart echoing through the rafters. And yet, somehow, you drift off. It's not comfortable, it's not clean, but it feels safe enough. The warmth from the dying fire wards off the worst of the cold. The tavern keeper maintains a vigilant watch with one eye open and a club within reach, and the pervasive noise transforms into its own unique lullaby, familiar, profoundly human, and vibrantly alive. You'll awaken with a sore neck, a parched mouth, and a questionably acquired bruise. But for a few hours, you've slept in the company of travelers, rogues, farmers, and fools. No kings, no silence, just snoring, straw, and the faint hope your boots are still there when morning arrives. Dawn creeps in like an uninvited guest, filtering pale light through the cracks in the shutters and prodding at your eyelids with relentless persistence. The tavern has transformed overnight, not necessarily quieter, but quieter in a defeated sort of way. You manage to open one eye. Someone's boot is resting squarely on your chest. Someone else is sleep mumbling about sheep taxes. The bard is snoring loudly under a table, clutching his lute as if it were a cherished lover. A chicken hops casually across the floor, pecking at yesterday's discarded bread crusts. No one questions its presence. The fire in the hearth has dwindled to embers, leaving the room cold and smoky. A few patrons begin to stir, groaning like wounded warriors after battles fought entirely within their own skulls. One man sits up, surveys his surroundings, and then promptly lies back down, having concluded that today simply isn't worth the effort. The tavern keeper is already awake, of course, clattering mugs, sweeping straw into fresh piles, and reheating something in a pot that emits a scent simultaneously inviting and slightly vengeful. They cast a sharp glance at the inert forms on the floor, then strike a ladle against a mug, sounding like a morning bell from hell. Up or out is your stark wake-up call. There's no breakfast buffet awaiting you. If you're lucky, there's more pottage, now even thicker and more mysterious than last night's offering. Bread is reheated, ale is watered down, and no one possesses the energy or inclination to complain. Some patrons simply dunk their heads into a barrel of rainwater outside and declare it clean living. You check your pouch. 2 coins and a single button. Better than expected. Your boots? Still here. One of them bears a distinct bite mark, but they are undeniably yours. A small victory. A few new faces trickle in. Early risers, weary travelers, diligent workers in need of a restorative drink before confronting livestock, taxes, or even worse, their neighbors. The tavern slowly begins to stir once more, like a great beast gradually awakening. Someone starts retelling a story from last night. It has already changed, of course. Now there were 2 fights, and the bar song miraculously summoned a ghost. Everyone nods in solemn agreement as if it were gospel truth. The night was a chaotic blur. The morning is groggy, grimy, and undeniably tinged with regret. And yet, you find yourself smiling because somehow you survived it. By now, you've experienced the sweat, the smoke, the sticky ale beneath your boots. You've survived the shouting, the clumsy flirting, the mystery pottage, and possibly even a flying bench. And through all that, one profound truth becomes clear. The medieval tavern was far more than just a drinking establishment. It was the very beating heart of the community. In a world devoid of phones, newspapers, or social networks, the tavern served as the primary conduit for news. A merchant arriving from the coast could share tantalizing gossip from a foreign port. A soldier could vividly describe the realities of war from the front lines. A bard could sing songs that symbolically stitched people together, even if the lyrics capriciously changed every night. This was a vital place for connection. Farmers drank alongside skilled craftsmen. Pilgrims shared their meager bread with shrewd thieves. Strangers quickly became friends, or at least reliable drinking buddies, often before the second round was even poured. Here, social classes blurred, rumors were born, crucial alliances were forged, and grudges were either buried or perhaps further inflamed, depending on how the dice happened to roll. The tavern also served as a bustling center where business was conducted. Deals were struck, contracts were sealed with a handshake over splintered tables and spilled cider. It functioned as a court, a confessional, and a vibrant theater stage, all at once. You could find a job, lose your purse, get married, or ignite a bitter feud in a single evening. And it offered something else too. Something you couldn't purchase at the market or pray for in a chapel. Profound relief. Relief from the biting cold, from the relentless labor, from the endless seriousness of simply surviving medieval life. For a few precious hours, you could sit near a crackling fire, listen to a terrible joke, sing an even worse song, and forget, just briefly, how harsh the outside world truly was. Even if the ale was lukewarm, the bed was itchy, and the food contained more bones than broth, the tavern provided a comforting sense of being vibrantly alive among other living souls. And in an age where everything, from rampant disease to devastating war to a brutally sharp winter, could claim you without warning, that feeling was no small thing. So when you stepped into a medieval tavern, you weren't just purchasing a drink. You were buying a sense of belonging, a captivating story, and perhaps, if the floor wasn't too crowded, a safe place to sleep where the fire still burned. Because long before the advent of cafes, pubs, and coffee houses, there was the tavern, loud, dirty, honest, and absolutely unforgettable. Before she became the most iconic face of ancient Egypt, immortalized in a limestone bust with high cheekbones and a gaze frozen in serene confidence, Nefertiti was a woman cloaked in profound mystery. Her name literally means, "the beautiful one has come," but no one knows precisely where she originated. Some scholars believe she was the daughter of a powerful Egyptian official named Ai, possibly even Akhenaten's own sister. Others contend she was a foreign princess, sent to Egypt as part of a strategic marriage alliance. Her origins remain debated, but her undeniable influence is clear. Nefertiti appears in the historical record with the suddenness of lightning, brilliant, transformative, and entirely unexpected. She entered Akhenaten's life not as a passive queen, but as an equal partner in a reign that would fundamentally shake Egypt's deeply entrenched religious and cultural foundations. Together they would dismantle centuries of tradition, discard the vast pantheon of gods, and elevate the sun disk, Aten, as the singular true deity. It was a radical, almost heretical move. And Nefertiti was not merely observing from the throne. She was actively leading ceremonies, making sacred offerings, and even depicted in art smiting enemies, a role typically reserved for male pharaohs. Unlike other queens who were often relegated to the background, Nefertiti was omnipresent. She appears in more artwork from the Amarna period than even Akhenaten himself. In these depictions, she is not cloaked in subservience. She stands tall, sometimes larger than life, quite literally holding power in her hands. And in a society where pharaohs were considered divine, her close proximity to Akhenaten, both spiritually and politically, suggested something more profound. Perhaps she was not just queen, perhaps she was a co-ruler. But this remarkable ascent was not without tension. Egypt was unprepared for such upheaval. The old priesthood deeply resented the loss of their traditional gods and temples. The capital was controversially moved to a new city, Akhetaten, known today as Amarna, severing ties with the established old ways. And through it all, Nefertiti remained a central figure, her image etched into stone walls, her name sung in hymns to the sun. Yet for all her profound visibility in life, her death is a complete vanishing act. No tomb, no confirmed body, no definitive end, just inexplicable silence. It's as if history, after showcasing her brilliance, suddenly chose to look away. And that perhaps is precisely where her enduring legend truly begins. To comprehend Nefertiti's remarkable ascent, you must first understand the man who revolutionized everything, Pharaoh Akhenaten. He wasn't born with that name. He was originally Amenhotep IV, a prince inheriting a 1,000-year legacy of gods and ingrained tradition. But something fundamentally shifted within him. Some attribute it to divine inspiration. Others suggest it was madness. When he became king, he controversially turned his back on the mighty god Amun and declared a new singular truth. There was only one deity worthy of worship, the sun itself, the Aten. This was not merely a religious shift. It was an earthquake that fractured the very bedrock of Egyptian civilization. Imagine a society meticulously built around temples, powerful priests, and intricate rituals being told overnight that their gods were false, their sacred worship obsolete. Akhenaten didn't just advocate monotheism, he ruthlessly enforced it. The temples of Amun were abruptly shut down. His name was systematically chiseled off monuments. Ancient statues were smashed, entire cities were abandoned. In their place, Akhenaten constructed something entirely new, Akhetaten, a city exclusively dedicated to the Aten, where the sun would rise directly between the cliffs and bathe the city in sacred light. And throughout this radical transformation, Nefertiti stood steadfastly at his side, not as a silent consort, but as a full and active participant. In the reliefs of the period, she is consistently shown worshipping the Aten with the same profound reverence as Akhenaten. Their daughters are frequently depicted with them, their heads tilted towards the radiant sun. It was a family portrait unlike anything seen in Egyptian art before or since, intimate, revolutionary, and deeply personal. Even the artistic style underwent a dramatic change, no longer stiff and formal, but fluid, exaggerated, sometimes even strikingly intimate. The king and queen kissing, playfully interacting with their children, praying in soft, flowing robes beneath the life-giving sun. Nefertiti was omnipresent in this new world. At times, her presence even seemed to overshadow her husband's. Some historians believe she wielded genuine political power, perhaps even serving as co-regent. There are inscriptions that refer to her as Neferuaten, a name some scholars believe she adopted when she began ruling in her own right. It remains unclear if Akhenaten shared the throne out of love, strategic calculation, or sheer necessity. But one thing was evident: without Nefertiti, this profound religious revolution may not have endured as long as it did. But revolutions are inherently fragile. The old gods do not take kindly to being replaced. And the common people? They were quietly watching, patiently waiting for the old order to inevitably return. By the height of her influence, Nefertiti had transcended the role of a mere queen. She had evolved into an icon, symbolizing not just profound beauty, but divine femininity and unyielding royal power. Egypt had witnessed powerful queens before, figures like Amos Nefertari and Hatshepsut, but Nefertiti's presence felt uniquely different. She wasn't ruling from the shadows or seizing power through military conquest. She was actively reshaping the spiritual and cultural fabric of Egypt alongside her husband, in real time, as a living goddess. She bore Akhenaten's 6 daughters, Meritaten, Meketaten, Ankhesenpaten, and others, all of whom were frequently depicted in intimate family scenes beneath the life-giving rays of Aten. Curiously, no sons were ever definitively confirmed. In a kingdom obsessed with maintaining lineage, this presented both a political challenge and a historical mystery. Was it simply fate, or was something else at play? Some suggest Akhenaten may have fathered sons with other wives, or even more controversially, with Nefertiti herself, fueling modern speculation and uncomfortable theories, ranging from the purely speculative to the openly salacious. What is certain is that motherhood was central to her public image. In art, Nefertiti is tenderly portrayed, cradling her children, their tiny arms reaching up to touch her cheeks. These are not stiff, cold statues. These are vibrant, living moments captured in stone, intimate, emotional, and radiant. In an age where pharaohs were often perceived as distant gods, Nefertiti's portrayal as a nurturing mother softened the divine, making it more human and relatable. Yet there was another, far more powerful side to her iconography. In multiple depictions, Nefertiti wears the blue crown, typically reserved exclusively for male rulers. She is shown actively smiting enemies, confidently riding chariots, and making offerings without Akhenaten by her side. These were not mere symbolic gestures. This was a queen performing the sacred duties traditionally assigned to a king. It suggests a quiet but radical truth. Nefertiti may have been preparing for more than just partnership. She may have been actively preparing to rule as pharaoh in her own right. Historical whispers suggest that after Akhenaten's health began to decline, possibly due to genetic disorders or the immense stress of his reforms, Nefertiti assumed greater governing responsibility. But this is precisely where the historical record begins to fade. In the final years of Akhenaten's reign, she abruptly vanishes from the public eye. No fanfare, no funeral inscriptions, no confirmed burial site. Did she die young? Did she fall from power? Or was she on the verge of becoming something even greater than a queen? Something history attempted and ultimately failed to erase. One day, Nefertiti was omnipresent, etched into walls, praised in hymns, ruling alongside a revolutionary pharaoh. And then, like a breath carried away on the desert wind, she simply vanished. No ancient Egyptian queen had ever maintained such a high public profile. Yet around year 12 of Akhenaten's 17-year reign, the historical records become eerily silent. Her name disappears from inscriptions. Her image fades from the art. There is no tomb, no death announcement, no scene of mourning. For a woman so central to Egypt's profound cultural upheaval, her sudden absence is more than just strange. It's a gaping black hole in history. So what exactly happened to her? One prevalent theory suggests the simplest explanation. She died. Childbirth was inherently risky, even for royalty. Nefertiti's second daughter, Meketaten, also disappears from records around this period, possibly indicating a dual tragedy, a mother and daughter lost in the same dark moment. But if that were true, why no elaborate funeral, no grand tribute, no dedicated temple? This was a woman revered like a goddess. A quiet, unrecorded death simply doesn't fit the script. Others propose something far more political. Perhaps Nefertiti fell from favor. The tides within the royal court may have turned against her. Akhenaten, increasingly isolated, could have sidelined her, possibly in favor of another consort. Some scholars suggest a co-ruler named Smenkhkare, an enigmatic figure who briefly appears in the historical record, may have replaced her. Was this a male heir, a half-brother, or was Smenkhkare actually Nefertiti herself, ruling under a new name? That's the most electrifying theory, that Nefertiti didn't disappear at all. She simply transformed. Evidence suggests someone named Neferneferuaten ruled in the final years of Akhenaten's reign. This individual used feminine grammar in inscriptions and even referred to Akhenaten as her beloved husband. Could this have been Nefertiti, finally crowned as pharaoh in her own right? If so, she would have joined the ranks of the rarest figures in Egyptian history, a female king like Hatshepsut before her. But even this tantalizing theory dissolves into the sands of uncertainty. Neferneferuaten's reign abruptly ends, and then emerges a more familiar name, Tutankhaten, later known as Tutankhamun, a child king who would decisively reverse his parents' religious reforms and restore the old gods. If Nefertiti did indeed reign alone, it was a brief period, and if she was Smenkhare or Neferneferuaten, she ruled as a ghost queen, visible only in subtle hints, half-carved cartouches and broken relics, a profound puzzle missing its central piece. And so, just as suddenly as she arrived, the most powerful woman in Egypt seemingly vanishes. But her legend, that was just beginning to take shape. As the dust of Amarna began to settle, a new figure emerged, a boy king, barely old enough to firmly grasp a scepter. His name was Tutankhaten, later famously changed to Tutankhamun, and he would become the most renowned pharaoh in the world, not for his achievements in life, but for the breathtaking treasures discovered in his largely untouched tomb. But what truly matters here is this: who was his mother? The historical records are frustratingly silent on this crucial detail. Some scholars argue that Nefertiti was his stepmother. Others speculate she may have been his biological mother, citing artistic depictions and the timing that seems to place him as a young child during her final public appearances. If Nefertiti truly bore Tutankhamun, it would provide a logical explanation. His early reign was clearly guided by someone with a steady, experienced hand, and his momentous decision to reverse his father's controversial religious revolution may not have been entirely his own initiative. And that's where the intrigue deepens further. Who was actually steering the ship during Tutankhamun's fragile regency? The boy king was only about 9 years old when he ascended the throne. A mere child cannot single-handedly restore a sprawling religious empire. Someone was undoubtedly operating behind the scenes, someone deeply experienced in court politics, religious affairs, and public symbolism. Could it have been Nefertiti, subtly ruling from the shadows? Or was it the powerful high priest Ai, her possible father? Or perhaps both, collaboratively working to erase the chaos of Amarna and meticulously return Egypt to its revered old gods? One of the more compelling pieces of evidence comes from a golden shrine discovered within Tutankhamun's tomb. It depicts a woman anointing the young king, a woman with features eerily similar to Nefertiti. If that indeed was her, it suggests she may not have vanished at all, but rather remained at the very heart of power, albeit in a more discreet capacity. Still, without a definitively named tomb, without a confirmed mummy, we are left with tantalizing fragments alone. If she did guide Tutankhamun, her fingerprints are everywhere, but her name is conspicuously absent, scrubbed from temples, deliberately omitted from king lists, as though someone actively sought to erase the memory of a woman who once ruled like a god. And yet, the irony is profound. Tutankhamun's eventual fame would inadvertently resurrect her image, because in the global search for his story, the world inevitably stumbled upon hers. For someone who stood at the very epicenter of Egypt's most radical era as queen, priestess, and possibly even pharaoh, Nefertiti left behind no confirmed tomb. Not a single monument bears her death rites, no sarcophagus, no funerary mask, no inscription whispering her final words to the gods. It's as though she simply evaporated. This profound absence has perplexed Egyptologists for over a century. In a culture utterly obsessed with the afterlife, where every noble was meticulously embalmed, mummified, and interred with detailed instructions for the soul's perilous journey, how could one of the most powerful women in Egyptian history simply be lost? Theories abound. One possibility suggests she was buried hastily and without formal ceremony during the tumultuous waning years of the Amarna period. Perhaps her radical religious legacy made her a dangerous figure in the eyes of the new, more traditional regime. Her tomb may have been deliberately dismantled, her name defaced, as part of the sweeping effort to eradicate the memory of Akhenaten's perceived heresy. After all, the return to traditional gods was swift and decisive, and vengeance expressed through stone-cut hieroglyphs was a common practice. Another, even more tantalizing theory suggests her tomb was never truly lost. It was simply misidentified or remains cunningly hidden. Some researchers have proposed that she lies within the Valley of the Kings itself, concealed behind the walls of Tutankhamun's own tomb. In 2015, radar scans of KV-62, the famed tomb of King Tut, indicated the possible presence of hidden chambers. Was Nefertiti buried just inches away, sealed off and forgotten beneath layers of history and gold? That idea captivated the world's imagination, a queen sleeping just beyond reach. Egyptologists held their collective breath, but further scans yielded inconclusive results. Subsequent excavations slowed, funding eventually dried up, and once again, Nefertiti retreated into the realm of myth. Yet her absence remains profoundly loud. We possess her images, dozens, perhaps hundreds, her likeness exquisitely captured in stone and pigment. Her iconic bust, now housed in Berlin, still gazes with unfathomable grace across museum glass, as if she possesses knowledge we don't, as if she is patiently waiting. Every year, new archaeological digs continue in Amarna and the valley. Every year, new whispers stir. Could a newly discovered, sealed chamber finally yield her secrets? Could a cartouche unearthed from forgotten sand finally reveal her true name? Or is she destined to remain an eternal riddle, an unfinished sentence in the grand story of Egypt? If history attempted to bury her, it did not succeed for long, because the relentless search for Nefertiti never truly ceased. It only deepened. If her tomb was never found and her body never definitively identified, why do we still remember Nefertiti with such clarity? The answer lies behind museum glass, bathed in soft lights in Berlin's Neues Museum, a meticulously painted limestone sculpture that has captivated the world since its dramatic rediscovery in 1912. The bust of Nefertiti. She gazes forward with an unparalleled poise and serenity, her long neck gracefully elegant, her distinctive blue crown prominent, and her features so exquisitely refined they almost appear modern. One eye remains unfinished, perhaps intentionally left that way, or perhaps a forgotten detail during the sculptor's final days in the workshop. Yet even in its incompleteness, she is timeless, unforgettable. The bust was unearthed by German archaeologist Ludwig Borchardt in the ruins of the sculptor Thutmose's studio at Amarna. When he brushed away the dust and revealed her face, he instantly recognized the profound significance of his discovery. In his diary, he simply wrote, "No use describing it, you have to see it." And once the world indeed saw it, Nefertiti transcended her role as a mere historical figure, becoming a global symbol of beauty, power, and ancient enigma. But even her iconic bust is not without controversy. Germany acquired the artifact during an era of less stringent antiquities laws, and Egypt has been consistently requesting its repatriation for decades. To the Egyptians, she rightfully belongs home, in the land whose sun once touched her skin, where she stood beneath the Aten sacred rays. However, Germany has steadfastly refused. They claim her extreme fragility renders her unsafe for travel. Others suggest it's primarily about prestige. Nefertiti draws immense crowds. She is, after all, their cultural Mona Lisa. Still, her enduring presence, regardless of her current location, has profoundly altered how the world perceives ancient women. She was not merely a passive beauty. Her bust captures something regal, assertive, almost defiantly challenging. She appears as someone who harbored deep secrets, made pivotal decisions, and irrevocably changed the course of empires. And indeed she did. It's truly remarkable how a single sculpture, delicate and silent, can so powerfully resurrect someone seemingly lost to the depths of time. We may never locate her tomb. We may never definitively know how she died. But through this timeless bust, Nefertiti achieved something extraordinary. She became immortal, not through gold and glory, but through the enduring power of human memory. The face may be still, but the story it eloquently tells. That story continues to speak louder than ever across the centuries. Nefertiti's story exists somewhere between solid stone and profound silence, between what we definitively know and what we desperately wish to believe. Few figures in ancient history have inspired such relentless fascination and such pervasive mystery. She is a walking paradox, one of the most extensively documented women of her time, yet still largely unknowable. Over the centuries, she has been imagined in countless ways, To some, she was a goddess in human form, the living embodiment of divine beauty. To others, she was a political mastermind, the true force behind the throne, perhaps even the throne itself. Some have portrayed her as a tragic romantic figure, hopelessly lost amidst the sands of revolution. Others depict her as ambitious, even ruthless, elegantly navigating a collapsing empire with chilling calculation. But what do we truly know for certain? We know she was far more than just a royal wife. Her visual imagery consistently rivals that of kings. Her prominent presence during religious rites, grand royal ceremonies, and even scenes of battle reveals a woman not simply standing beside power, but actively wielding it. In a deeply patriarchal world, she carved out her own unique space, not through open rebellion, but through sheer presence, through unwavering poise, and through a masterful command of the visual and spiritual language of her era. We know she was central to one of history's most audacious religious shifts. While Akhenaten may have conceived the monotheistic sun cult, it was Nefertiti who profoundly embodied it. She served as the human face of a divine ideal, the vital bridge between the Aten above and the people below. She didn't just serve the gods, she became their very image. And we know that after her mysterious disappearance, her memory was almost completely erased. The intense backlash against Akhenaten's regime swept her name into oblivion. Her statues were systematically smashed, her inscriptions defaced, her pivotal role in history intentionally buried. Yet here we are, 3,000 years later, still whispering her name. Why? Because myth possesses an uncanny ability to survive where hard facts sometimes cannot. Because when a woman becomes both an iconic figure and an enduring enigma, she slips into a space where the relentless march of time cannot reach her. Because sometimes, the unanswered questions echo far louder than the definitive answers. And maybe, just maybe, that's precisely how Nefertiti intended it, to be remembered, not fully explained, to be admired, not contained, to live forever, not as a woman confined to one tomb, but as a queen of endless speculation. More than 3 millennia have passed since Nefertiti last walked beneath Egypt's scorching sun. Yet her profound shadow still stretches across our modern world, etched in museum glass, whispered through academic halls, vividly splashed across the pages of novels and the screens of documentaries. Unlike most historical figures, she has not faded into the distant past. If anything, her presence grows larger with the passage of time. There's something utterly irresistible about her, and it's not solely her beauty, for we have seen beauty before. It is the enduring mystery. The deliberate blank spaces in her biography feel like a challenge, a subtle taunt, as if she's daring us to try and understand her, knowing full well we never truly will. And in that intriguing way, she has become something more than merely historical. She has become archetypal. Every new generation reinterprets Nefertiti in its own image. In the early 20th century, she was often portrayed as an exotic queen, mysterious yet submissive. During the feminist movement, she powerfully emerged as a symbol of female authority, an ancient ruler tragically lost to patriarchal erasure. In contemporary media, she is celebrated as a style icon, a formidable African queen, a shrewd political player, and even a possible pharaoh. She has experienced 1,000 second lives, not through irrefutable facts, but through the boundless power of human imagination. But perhaps that is the most fitting afterlife of all. In ancient Egypt, immortality wasn't solely about meticulous mummification. It was fundamentally about enduring memory. If your name was spoken aloud, your image seen, your story retold, you continued to live on. You could traverse the serene field of reeds, dine with the gods, and truly exist beyond the confines of death. Nefertiti, whether by intentional design or by mere chance, has undeniably achieved that. Her name is spoken across continents. Her face is recognized as one of the most iconic in all of human history. Her story, though fragmented, continues to command global attention. So in a profound sense, her greatest legacy was not carved into a tomb or sealed beneath desert stone. It was this persistent, enduring curiosity. She left behind a perfect mystery, a life half seen, half erased, and entirely unforgettable. And perhaps that was her ultimate act of power. Not just to rule an empire, not just to shape religion or raise royal daughters, but to become timeless. Nefertiti, the beautiful one who has come, never truly departed. She remains here in our questions, our wonder, and our innate human need to remember the women history deliberately attempted to forget. She lives not in gold or glory, but in the eternal act of being diligently searched for, and what could possibly be more immortal than that? In China, where the clouds often hang low and the wind murmurs softly through bamboo groves, a dragon lies coiled. But this is no mythical creature, no fire-breathing beast of ancient legend. This particular dragon is composed of earth and stone, meticulously carved by centuries of calloused hands and patient visionary effort. It is the Longji rice terraces, affectionately known to locals as the dragon's backbone, and its graceful curves ripple across the mountainside like majestic scales, shimmering with water, vibrant rice, and a deep, ancient pride. From a distance, the terraces bear an uncanny resemblance to a sleeping creature. The hills ripple with rhythmic precision, each layer rising and falling like the sinew of a living form. But approach closer, and you'll discover something even more vibrantly alive. Water flows in soft whispers along meticulously dug channels. Tender rice seedlings flutter gently in the breeze, and at dawn, the morning mist gracefully drapes the landscape like breath rising from the dragon's nostrils. These terraces were not constructed in haste. Their remarkable story began over 700 years ago, when the Zhuang and Yao people, ethnic minorities with profound ties to these mountains, chose to meticulously tame the steep slopes rather than abandon them. Flat land was scarce, machinery was non-existent. And so they gazed upon the formidable mountain and posed a simple existential question: how do we sustain ourselves here? The answer unfolded over generations. Armed with little more than rudimentary stone tools and bamboo baskets, they painstakingly carved the hills inch by inch, year after year. With each level meticulously constructed, they not only shaped the land, they taught it to breathe in harmony with them. Rainfall transformed into a precious resource. The daunting slope became a source of sustenance. Rice, the very staple of life, began to flourish where gravity once reigned supreme, and over time, the terraces began to resemble a majestic dragon in repose, powerful, eternal, and sacred. This was more than mere agriculture. It was a profound harmony, a silent, enduring pact between humans and nature. No part of the mountain was wasted, and no part was violently forced to conform. Instead, the people worked with the earth, shaping it in graceful curves and gentle swells, listening to the murmuring wind, following the natural flow of the water. Today, the dragon's backbone continues to feed entire villages, but more importantly, it stands as a powerful testament to what unwavering patience can build. In a world constantly racing forward, here lies a dragon that was never pursued, only meticulously carved. Layer by layer, dream by dream. To walk among the Longji rice terraces is to step into a world meticulously carved by sheer persistence. There are no illusions here, no machine tracks scarring the earth, no corporate survey markers. What stretches across these mountains are the undeniable fingerprints of human endurance. Every graceful curve, every subtle slope, every drop of water has been meticulously arranged, stone by hands that intuitively understood the pulse of the land. Centuries ago, when the Zhuang and Yao peoples first gazed upon these steep and unforgiving hillsides, they did not perceive insurmountable obstacles. They saw profound opportunity. The fertile valleys below were already claimed, but high up here amidst the rugged peaks, there was possibility, if only they could compel the earth to cooperate. With no heavy machinery, they began their monumental task. Using rudimentary wooden shovels, stone hoes, and baskets filled with mud and rubble, carried tirelessly on backs worn smooth by time. Slowly, steadily, the terraces began to take shape, forming horizontal veins across the mountain, held securely in place by hand-stacked stone walls. These were not accidental cuts into the slope, they were meticulously calculated. Each level had to be perfectly balanced, not only to retain water, but to seamlessly transfer it from one tier to the next without any waste. A single miscalculation could lead to the collapse of an entire section. If a slope was too steep, the water would rush downwards uncontrollably. If too flat, it would stagnate. So they measured, not with rulers, but with generations of accumulated intuition. Children learned from their elders. Elders diligently observed the seasons, and the mountain, in time, yielded. Not with surrender, but with a quiet trust. And the remarkable result? a landscape that seemingly defies nature by flowing effortlessly with it. From the valley base to the cloud-kissed peaks, these terraces ascend like an impossibly grand spiral staircase reaching for the sky. They mirror the topography with an inherent elegance that makes it appear as if the mountain itself organically grew them. But no, the mountain did not sculpt these curves. Humans did, with no engines, no concrete, no formal architectural degrees, just countless hours, persistent trial and error, and the unwavering belief that land, no matter how steep, can be made to sustain life. Today, the terraces remain fully functional, still meticulously farmed, still carefully repaired, and still profoundly respected. There are no bulldozers, no shortcuts. The old ways persist, not because they stubbornly resist the future, but because they have proven something rare and invaluable. That tradition, when deeply rooted enough, can indeed outlast every storm. If the dragon's backbone represents muscle and bone, then water is undeniably its lifeblood. It flows quietly, without the aid of pumps or engines, tracing ancient channels that gracefully descend from mountaintop springs into every single terrace below. This intricate hydraulic choreography is no mere accident. It represents the secret life of the terraces, the fundamental reason for their centuries-long endurance. At the highest elevations of the mountain, rainwater and natural springs are meticulously collected in narrow ditches and earthen canals. From there, gravity becomes the farmer's silent and efficient ally. The water descends gently through terrace after terrace, pooling softly in each field before gracefully spilling into the next. This fluid, seamless design ensures that every patch of rice receives precisely what it requires, no more, no less. There are no complex valves, no electronic switches. Control resides in subtle gates crafted from stone or wood, adjusted by hand and ingrained habit. If one terrace overflows, it risks flooding the one below. If one develops a leak, a drought may consequently follow. And so the villagers, diligent guardians of this delicate system, traverse the narrow ridges daily, meticulously checking, making fine adjustments, and attentively listening to the rhythmic sound of the flowing water. It's less like conventional farming and more akin to playing a complex instrument. One wrong note and the entire song is off-key. But the water does more than merely nourish the rice, it beautifully mirrors the sky. In spring, when the terraces are first deliberately flooded, the paddies transform into vast sheets of glass. They flawlessly reflect the clouds, the sun, and even the stars on a clear night. Visitors often describe the sight as surreal, as if the mountain itself has become a living mirror, perfectly reflecting both heaven and earth. Then summer arrives. The water thickens with vibrant stalks of green. The mesmerizing reflection fades, replaced by dynamic movement, rippling rice plants swaying gently in the wind like an emerald sea. In autumn, the water gleams through the rich gold of ripened grain. And in winter, when farming ceases, snow and frost gracefully replace the flowing current. The dragon sleeps, but the channels remain, quiet veins patiently awaiting the return of spring. Time itself flows differently here. It's measured not by hours, but by moisture, by the first subtle trickle of mountain thaw, by the resonant sound of returning frogs, by the rich scent of wet soil. In a world that counts time in seconds, the people of Longji still measure it in seasons and individual drops. And so the dragon lives on, not in fire and flight, but in the gentle ripples of water pulsing softly through a living masterpiece of stone and soil. Spring in the Longji Mountains commences not with the bursting of blossoms, but with the vital presence of water. As the snow melts from the higher peaks, countless streams trickle downward, breathing life into the patiently waiting terraces. The mirror-like paddies are meticulously prepared. The dragon stirs, and the people meticulously ready themselves for the ancient ritual that binds them to every generation that came before, planting the very first seed. There is no grand announcement, only quiet, deliberate movement. Farmers, both young and old, rise with the morning mist. They walk barefoot along the narrow ridges, their straw hats pulled low over their eyes, baskets balanced expertly on their backs. The air is thick with the earthy scent of soaked soil and the crisp mountain wind. The paddies, deliberately flooded just days earlier, now shimmer like polished jade. This is not a task for machines. It never has been, nor will it be. Each delicate rice seedling, carefully nurtured in nursery beds, is meticulously transplanted by hand, one by one, line by precise line. The workers step into the cold water and gently press the tender stalks into the soft mud with nimble fingers. It's a rhythm that feels almost sacred, back bent, arm extended, hand pressing, repeat. This methodical process continues all day, sometimes for weeks. Children follow closely, splashing playfully in the shallows, mimicking their elders. They acquire knowledge not from textbooks, but by standing in the water, feeling the subtle resistance of the mud, and intuitively learning the correct spacing by eye. It's how vital knowledge endures here, through lived experience, not just spoken instruction. Planting is more than arduous labor. It is a profound ceremony. Offerings are humbly made to the benevolent mountain spirits. Songs are sung softly. In some villages, elders scatter the first handful of seedlings as a sacred blessing. Every field planted represents a solemn promise to the land, to the revered ancestors, and to the children yet to arrive. The pace is unhurried. No one dares to rush the dragon. No one attempts to race the mountain. Instead, the rhythm of planting evolves into a meditation, a slow, graceful dance between human and nature, of unwavering patience and profound purpose. And as the days gently pass, vibrant green shoots begin to rise from the watery fields like hopeful whispers. From this moment forward, the terraces will not just grow rice, but cultivate hope. Each tiny seed is a silent prayer. Each meticulously planted row, a quiet defiance against hunger and haste. And so the cycle begins anew, not with noise or fire, but with hands immersed in mud and hearts reaching for the sky. The dragon is awake, the mountain breathes, and the future is gently planted, one seed at a time. Scattered along the ridgelines and nestled within the graceful crooks of the terraces are the vibrant heartbeats of the dragon's backbone, villages such as Pingan, Dajai, and Jinkung. These are not mere settlements, they are living museums of heritage, where every home, every winding path, and every wooden balcony clings to the mountain like an enduring memory that steadfastly refuses to fade. The houses are constructed of timber, resting securely on stilts to protect them from torrential rains and the inherent steepness of the slope. Their rooftops, dark and slanted, elegantly mirror the contours of the terraces they majestically overlook. From above, they appear like delicate wooden lanterns gracefully floating on emerald waves of green. Inside, life is characterized by simplicity, warmth, and a profound sense of community. Generations often share a single home. Meals are cooked over crackling wood fires. The comforting aroma of rice wine and bamboo smoke gently drifts into the crisp mountain air. The people residing here belong to distinct ethnic minorities, primarily the Zhuang and the Red Yao, each possessing their own unique language, cherished customs, and rich oral traditions. You'll instantly recognize the Yao women. Their exceptionally long, black hair, uncut since childhood, is meticulously coiled into elegant shapes atop their heads. Some allow it to cascade like silken waterfalls when they bathe in the river, a scene so graceful it verges on pure myth. Despite the creeping influence of modernization up the mountain trails, deeply ingrained traditions remain remarkably strong. Hand-woven clothes are meticulously dyed in rich indigo. Wooden looms creak rhythmically in quiet rooms. Music is played on melodious reed pipes and resonant bronze drums during vibrant village festivals. Weddings still incorporate elaborate ritual dances. The harvest is still enthusiastically welcomed with joyous song. Hospitality here is not a mere transaction. It's an instinctive reflex. Guests are warmly offered tea brewed from local leaves, rice wine served in intricately carved gourds, and captivating stories passed down from elders who vividly remember the mountain before electricity ever arrived. They speak of majestic dragons concealed in the mist, of revered ancestors who first meticulously carved these hills, and of benevolent spirits who still faithfully guard the verdant fields. And although tourism now attracts visitors from every corner of the globe, the fundamental rhythm of village life continues largely undisturbed. The rice still flourishes. The sacred rituals still precisely mark the changing seasons. The terraces, much like the people themselves, endure, not by stubbornly resisting change, but by gracefully absorbing it slowly, carefully, much like water descending one level at a time. Here, nestled within the dragon's gentle coils, life is not rushed. It flows, it echoes, it remembers. To traverse the terraces of Longji is to journey through layers of profound myth. The hills are not merely composed of soil and stone. They are alive with captivating stories, whispered through swaying bamboo groves and carried gently on the wind. For the villagers, these majestic mountains are not just inert land. They are revered sacred beings, meticulously shaped by ancient gods, faithfully guarded by benevolent spirits, and intricately inhabited by tales passed down from one generation to the next. The most enduring legend speaks of a colossal sleeping dragon whose magnificent body stretches across the ridgelines. Its spine rises in graceful coils, which are in fact the very terraces themselves. Locals firmly believe that the elegant curves of the mountain are not man-made, but rather the dragon's enormous scales rising and falling with its rhythmic breath. When mist gracefully rolls in from the valley and envelops the paddies in a soft white blanket, it is said the dragon stirs gently, breathing softly in its deep sleep. Another captivating tale recounts how the terraces were born from divine generosity. In a time of severe famine, the ancestors ascended the mountains and fervently prayed to the heavens. Moved by their profound devotion, the gods sent abundant rain and instructed them to meticulously carve the hills into steps so that rice could flourish. The people obediently complied, and the majestic dragon reportedly appeared to guide their hands. Ever since, they have honored the mountain with deep respect, never shouting loudly in the fields, never cutting down trees without first offering a prayer. These deeply held beliefs are not formally written in books. They live vibrantly in songs sung during the arduous planting season, in the fragrant incense burned before a new growing cycle, and in the profound silence maintained during misty mornings. Children grow up hearing these captivating tales not as mere fantasy, but as undeniable truth intrinsically embedded within the very land. To scoff at the dragon is to risk a poor harvest. To disrespect the spirits is to invite devastating floods or prolonged drought. There are also spirits believed to reside within the water. Some farmers still make small offerings before releasing the spring water into the terraces for the first time each year. A few drops of rice wine, a quiet prayer murmured under their breath. This is not done for show, but simply out of ingrained tradition, as natural and automatic as tying a shoe. And whether you personally believe in dragons or not, something undeniably sacred hangs in the air. Perhaps it's the profound silence, perhaps it's the ethereal clouds, or perhaps it's the quiet, unwavering certainty that this place transcends mere human labor. It's a living story still being told, meticulously written not in ink but in enduring stone, vital water, and thriving rice. For centuries, the dragon's backbone remained a secret closely guarded by the mountains, remote, tranquil, and known only to those who called it home. But no place, no matter how sacred, remains untouched forever. Roads eventually arrived and power lines soon followed. Tourists, armed with cameras and smartphones, began to ascend the hills alongside the diligent farmers, and the terraces, ancient and weathered, confronted a new challenge they had never faced before. How do you gracefully endure the modern world? At first, there was understandable apprehension. Some feared the mountain would be sold off piece by piece to aggressive developers, that concrete would replace traditional wood, and that their vibrant culture would devolve into mere costume for tourists. But the people of Longji didn't simply endure, they skillfully adapted, not by abandoning their cherished past, but by intricately weaving the present into it, one careful thread at a time. Villagers began opening their homes to guests, not operating as impersonal resorts, but as authentic family stays. Visitors partake in local meals, sticky rice steamed in bamboo, wild greens freshly picked that very morning. They sleep in traditional wooden stilt houses where roosters still faithfully announce the sunrise. The experience isn't meticulously curated for show. It's genuinely lived, honest, and profoundly real. And the farming? It continues uninterrupted. Each season, locals still flood the terraces, still plant by hand, and still harvest with sickles worn smooth by time and labor. Children attend school during the day but diligently assist in the fields at dusk. Tourism undoubtedly brings welcome income, but rice brings life itself. One supports the other. Both are absolutely essential. Some young villagers have indeed left for the bustling cities, but many eventually return. There is something deeply magnetic about the terraces, something far more profound than mere nostalgia. It's the soothing sound of water gracefully sliding through the channels, the mesmerizing way the stars reflect in the flooded paddies, the subtle way the mountains inherently teach patience. Local festivals have certainly grown louder. Yes, there are now microphones where there were once only traditional drums. Signs in Mandarin and English stand discreetly beside sacred springs. But the ancient rituals still take place. Offerings are still humbly made. Elders still lead the communal songs. The dragon's backbone did not resist change. It absorbed it with remarkable grace and profound balance. The terraces endure not because they are frozen immutably in time, but because they breathe with time, flexing, adjusting, but never truly breaking. In an age where cherished tradition is often sacrificed in the relentless pursuit of progress, Longji stands as quiet, compelling proof that progress can indeed proceed gently, if it so chooses. That the old ways still possess a vital place in the modern world, especially when they are this exquisitely beautiful. The dragon's backbone is never precisely the same place twice. With each passing season, it sheds its skin, transforms its colors, and subtly shifts its mood. While cities evolve over years, the terraces change within weeks, draped not just in light, but in intrinsic rhythm. To stand among them through a full year is to witness a mountain truly breathe. Spring arrives like a vast liquid mirror. The terraces are flooded in preparation for planting, and the still water impeccably reflects the sky like shimmering silver glass. Clouds drift not only above, but also seemingly below your feet. Visitors often speak of walking through heaven itself. The fields appear empty, yet they are brimming with immense potential. Beneath the calm surface, new life is quietly stirring. Summer brings an explosive burst of vibrant green. The rice shoots stretch tall and straight, blanketing the hills in an emerald cascade. From a distance, the terraces resemble endless ribbons of lush velvet, gracefully rolling in every direction. The air is warm and moist. Frogs call loudly from the paddies. Farmers, knee-deep in water, labor from dawn till dusk, their straw hats bobbing like tiny sails on a verdant sea. Autumn transforms the landscape into a symphony of gold. It's harvest time. The rice matures and the terraces catch fire in the sunlight, glowing with ripened grain. The fields ripple beautifully in the wind, and the joyous sound of drums echoes through the villages. Families gather. Songs are sung enthusiastically. Sticky rice is lovingly cooked. It's not just a season, it's a profound celebration. The dragon, now fully awake, generously offers its bounty. Winter draws the entire mountain into a state of serene stillness. The terraces become empty. The water slowly drains away. Snow sometimes falls, dusting the steps in soft white. Other times, frost clings delicately to the walls like intricate lace. There are no tools visible in the fields, no human voices, only profound silence. The dragon sleeps, resting deeply, patiently waiting. Each season writes a distinctly different poem. Spring reflects, summer grows, autumn feeds, winter rests. The enduring beauty of Longji resides not only in its magnificent shape, but in its profound cyclical nature, in how it gracefully accepts time without resistance, in how it transforms quietly, never needing to loudly announce itself. Photographers diligently chase the light here, hoping to capture something eternal. But the terraces do not freeze their beauty for anyone. They move, they breathe. They gently teach us that true beauty is not static. It's a fluid rhythm, a continuous practice, a promise faithfully renewed with every passing season. And so the dragon turns once more, not with a roar or a fiery blaze, but with the quiet power of water, grain, and wind. Ultimately, the terraces are far more than mere fields. They represent a solemn vow, quiet, gracefully curved, and meticulously carved into the mountainside. A profound promise passed down from hand to hand, season to season, generation to generation. The dragon's backbone is not simply a wonder of agriculture or a masterpiece of engineering. It is the compelling story of what transpires when humans choose to live with the land rather than aggressively against it. There were undoubtedly easier paths. The ancestors of Longji could have migrated to the valleys, sought flatter ground, but they chose to remain. They diligently studied the slope, attentively listened to the stone, faithfully followed the water, and in doing so they rendered the impossible ordinary, successfully feeding entire villages on a steep mountainside. Every graceful curve holds a valuable lesson. not just about cultivating rice, but about unwavering patience, about enduring legacy, and about profound care. These terraces were not constructed in a matter of years or even decades. They required centuries to complete. There is no shortcut to achieving harmony, no machine that can replicate the intricate knowledge etched into each stone wall by calloused hands and quiet, persistent effort. And yet, nothing about them is rigidly frozen in time. The terraces are vibrantly alive. They constantly evolve. They gracefully bend with the changing weather, with the evolving needs of the people, and with the shifting shape of the world itself. That is their enduring secret. They were never rigid. They were always fluid. Even now, as the modern world ascends the hills with its signals and screens, the terraces remain profoundly grounded. They change, but they do not vanish, because their roots extend beyond mere soil. They are deeply embedded in story, in sacred ritual, and in the simple, enduring act of planting a seed and faithfully trusting the sky. To traverse the dragon's backbone is to witness a living contract between humanity and the earth, a contract sealed with sweat and sun, and faithfully renewed with every single harvest. It serves as a powerful reminder that progress does not always equate to speed, and that true greatness doesn't always announce itself with a roar. Sometimes it murmurs softly, like a gentle stream slipping over smooth stone. And perhaps that is precisely why the terraces resonate with so many, from hardworking farmers to curious travelers to wistful dreamers, because they represent what we have almost forgotten, that the most lasting things in this world are not built with brute force, but with intricate rhythm, profound humility, and the patient embrace of time. The dragon sleeps, the people endure, and the mountain eternally remembers. Most visitors to Giza direct their gaze skyward, drawn irresistibly to the towering silhouettes of the pyramids and the enigmatic gaze of the Great Sphinx. But few ever inquire about what lies beneath. Underneath the vast desert sand, beneath the flowing Nile, beneath centuries of forgotten currents. For in the quiet shallows near the ancient village of Abu Rawash, just a short distance from the Giza Plateau, a strange and persistent tale stirs. It speaks of something enormous, severely eroded and largely ignored, an underwater sphinx. Local fishermen have whispered of it for generations, a smooth-backed shape that appears far too symmetrical to be a natural formation, a distinct feline form half buried in mud and waterlogged sediment. When the Nile's waters recede during periods of drought, parts of it become visible, stone curves, distinct grooves, and what some claim is a carved paw, impossibly worn but unmistakably shaped by human hands. It does not lie along the well-trodden tourist routes. There are no prominent guideposts, no velvet ropes, no tour buses idling nearby. Just an area thick with reeds, brackish water, and profound silence. Explorers who have ventured there claim the very land itself feels different, charged, as if ancient memory clings tenaciously to it. Beneath the murky waters, sonar scans have detected distinct geometric patterns and what appear to be blocks intentionally placed. But what truly startles are the claims that this figure, a sphinx-like formation submerged near Giza, may predate the pyramids entirely, not by decades, but by millennia. If true, it would fundamentally shatter the established chronology of Egyptian civilization. The mainstream timeline firmly places the Great Sphinx's construction around 2500 BCE, but this underwater form, if genuinely carved, could belong to an age when the Sahara was still green and the Nile flowed wildly through a wetter, far lusher landscape. Skeptics, of course, dismiss it as a misidentified rock formation, limestone shaped by millennia of water and fervent wishful thinking. But the precise grooves, the deliberate curves, the alignment with celestial markers, it all provokes more questions than easy answers. The site remains officially unexcavated. Mainstream archaeologists have largely ignored it. Perhaps it amounts to nothing. Perhaps it means everything. A relic not just of Egypt's ancient past, but of an entire world lost to flood and time. For now, the so-called underwater sphinx lies quietly, not sleeping, but patiently waiting. And if it could speak, one wonders what profound secrets it would reveal, and why so many seem determined not to listen. The legend of the underwater sphinx transitioned from whispered folklore to global curiosity in the 1980s. This was when a few independent researchers and divers began publishing unusual reports, accounts of a massive, lion-bodied figure partially submerged near the Giza Plateau. Early photographs were grainy, inconclusive, and often readily dismissed. But they ignited something that could not be easily contained: intense curiosity and, more dangerously, persistent doubt. One of the most vocal early proponents was an amateur Egyptologist who claimed to have seen a deeply weathered monument submerged beneath layers of silt and flood deposits during a brief drought window. According to him, the figure was not an isolated rock or an optical illusion caused by erosion. It possessed clear geometry, distinct legs, unmistakable symmetry, and even the faint suggestion of a carved face. Naturally, this directly challenged the traditional narrative. Egyptology as an academic discipline relies heavily on established structures and accepted timelines. Most scholars firmly place the construction of the Giza pyramids and the iconic Great Sphinx at around 2500 BCE, during the reign of Pharaoh Khafre. The suggestion of another Sphinx, potentially older and partially submerged, would necessitate a fundamental rethinking not just of Egyptian history, but of the very timeline of human civilization itself. Mainstream academics responded with considerable caution and often outright disdain. Without peer-reviewed excavation, reliable carbon dating, or rigorous stratigraphic studies, the claim could not be taken seriously. Many argued that the so-called underwater Sphinx was likely a natural geological formation, limestone weathered and shaped by thousands of years of Nile flooding and sediment erosion. In Egypt, they pointed out, nature frequently mimics intentional design. Wind, water, and time are undeniably capable sculptors, but the intriguing photographs continued to circulate. The sonar readings persistently showed unusual patterns, too regular, too smooth, too suggestive of artificial shaping. And then came the theorists. Authors, filmmakers, and fringe historians began constructing elaborate stories around the mystery, proposing that the Sphinx was a relic of a forgotten civilization, perhaps Atlantean, perhaps a pre-dynastic Egyptian culture, tragically lost in a cataclysmic flood that scoured the ancient Sahara. They highlighted unusual water erosion patterns on the original Great Sphinx, argued for the existence of lost ancient technologies, and hinted that what lay hidden beneath the Nile might be far older than accepted historical memory permits. The debate grew louder, but the physical ground remained undisturbed. No official excavation was launched, no major museum claimed the discovery, and the Sphinx, if that is indeed what it is, remained precisely where it had always been. Buried in silt, caught precariously between compelling myth and obscuring mud. The idea that something near Giza might predate the pyramids isn't just provocative, it's genuinely revolutionary. If the underwater Sphinx proves to be more than mere erosion or a remarkable coincidence, then Egypt's story didn't commence in the 4th dynasty. It began much earlier, deep in prehistory, during an era when the Sahara was a green savanna and the Nile flowed wider, wilder, and far less predictable. This compelling possibility gained significant traction in the 1990s when geologist Dr. Robert Schoch meticulously studied the Great Sphinx itself. He asserted that the deep vertical weathering visible on the Sphinx's enclosure was not caused by wind and sand, but by heavy, sustained ancient rainfall, conditions that had not existed on the Giza Plateau since at least 7000 BCE. That powerful argument pushed the possible construction date of the Sphinx back by thousands of years, long before the first pharaohs began carving their names into stone. If water had shaped the original Sphinx, could water also have concealed an even older sibling? The so-called underwater Sphinx is located in a lower region near ancient floodplains. Some satellite imagery and ground-penetrating radar scans suggest the presence of possible foundations, rectangular outlines, and deliberate shaping, all buried beneath layers of silt and seasonal water. These indicators hint that the site may not just be older than the Great Sphinx. It may originate from a time when nothing in Egypt was yet recorded in hieroglyphs. Supporters of this theory point to Egypt's missing historical chapters, the significant gap between the end of the Ice Age and the verifiable rise of the first dynasties. During this vast period, the Nile drastically shifted its courses. The Sahara transitioned from lush, wet grasslands to arid desert, and civilizations may have silently risen and fallen, completely undocumented and irrevocably erased. The notion that an ancient people, pre-literate and pre-pharaonic, could have sculpted a monument of this immense scale seems implausible to traditional historians. But is it truly? Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, for instance, was constructed around 9600 BCE by hunter-gatherers. It features megalithic pillars with intricately carved animals, predating Stonehenge by thousands of years. Could Egypt harbor a similar secret? An ancient culture that marked the land with monumental stone long before papyrus carried their stories? If the underwater Sphinx was indeed built in such a remote era, it would fundamentally alter everything we know about human history. It would suggest not just forgotten ruins, but an entire forgotten age, one that may have subtly influenced the builders of Giza, leaving behind more than just myth, perhaps a tangible monument, drowned then forgotten. Stone does not lie, it remembers. And around the site of the so-called underwater Sphinx, it narrates a quiet but persistent story. A narrative not just of time, but profoundly of water. Sediment layers, distinctive erosion marks, and ancient flood patterns all hint at a history stretching long before the desert became dry, long before the Nile settled into its familiar course, and long before the pharaohs ever carved their names into recorded history. Geologists who have meticulously examined photographs and data from the site near Abu Rawash note peculiar erosion marks, smooth, rounded grooves that strongly suggest prolonged exposure to actively flowing water. These marks indicate forces not of wind or sand, but of substantial rainfall and continuous water movement, forces that have been absent from this region for thousands of years. Similar arguments have been compellingly made about the Great Sphinx itself, particularly regarding its enclosure wall. Critics of the standard timeline emphasize that the deep vertical fissures observed on the Sphinx's surrounding trench bear no resemblance whatsoever to wind erosion. Instead, they precisely mimic the effects of heavy, sustained, prehistoric rainfall. Now, at the alleged underwater Sphinx site, we observe the identical signature, only this time it is concealed beneath a shallow flood basin. During periods of low Nile flow or active excavation, parts of the structure are reportedly visible. Lion-like haunches, shoulders, and a foundation that appears far too level to be naturally formed. Researchers who have surveyed the area note that the basin is geologically active, characterized by a high clay content and clear evidence of ancient water tables violently fluctuating. The stone there is indeed heavily worn, but not randomly so. The wear meticulously follows the precise shape of the structure itself, flowing in lines that strongly suggest deliberate carving, followed by subsequent submergence. Some sediment layers surrounding the site date back to the early Holocene, a period when Egypt was significantly wetter, greener, and prone to massive recurring floods. If a monument had been carved during that time, it could have stood for centuries before being eventually swallowed by mud, forgotten by shifting human populations, and ultimately buried under the Nile's wandering silt. Skeptics argue that this is all mere coincidence, natural formations interpreted into myth by hopeful eyes. But water does not spontaneously form symmetry. It does not carve paws. It does not create perfectly aligned foundations or echo the precise geometry of a known sphinx just a few miles away. So the question intensifies. If water deliberately erased this monument from view, what else has it taken with it? And more urgently, how much of our history still lies hidden just beneath the surface? If the underwater Sphinx is truly there, silent, meticulously carved, and profoundly ancient, why has it not been excavated? Why does it remain beneath layers of mud and pervasive silence, consistently overlooked by archaeologists, ignored by governments, and left to the mercies of the river's currents? The answer, much like the artifact itself, lies subtly beneath the surface. Egypt's archaeological institutions are fiercely protective, and justifiably so. The nation diligently guards its ancient heritage with rigid protocols, strict excavation rules, and an unwavering insistence on academic consensus. Unearthing any site, especially one that fundamentally challenges the traditional historical timeline, requires extensive permits, substantial funding, international oversight, and most importantly, institutional approval. And that crucial approval often hinges on one unspoken rule. Do not rewrite Egypt's established history without an overwhelming mountain of undeniable evidence. And therein lies the core problem. The so-called underwater Sphinx has never received an official, state-sponsored excavation. Independent researchers, foreign academics, and fringe theorists have indeed studied the area, but without formal backing, their findings remain anecdotal, tantalizingly suggestive, but not definitively conclusive. There's also the complex issue of the Nile itself. The river is not a static feature. It floods, recedes, and subtly shifts its course over decades. The specific site where the monument is alleged to rest is flood-prone, often submerged for much of the year. Excavation would necessitate draining the entire area, meticulously rerouting water, diligently protecting nearby delicate ecosystems, and carefully managing structural damage caused by centuries of sediment pressure. That alone would demand years, if not decades, of intensive effort. Then there are significant political factors. A discovery of this immense magnitude, if conclusively validated, would disrupt more than just established academic timelines. It could challenge deeply ingrained national narratives, potentially upset national pride, and attract an intense media frenzy that Egypt might not be eager to welcome. The Ministry of Antiquities typically prefers to promote discoveries that reinforce Egypt's grandeur and historical continuity, not those that fundamentally question its foundational history. Some whispers suggest that certain institutions may already possess more knowledge than they publicly reveal, that preliminary studies have been conducted discreetly behind closed doors. But without official public records, peer-reviewed findings, or government announcements, these claims inevitably drift into the realm of conspiracy theory. And so the monument remains buried. Whether by accident or by deliberate design, it rests beneath layers of mud and skepticism. It is a strange irony that in a land utterly obsessed with meticulously preserving its ancient past, one of its greatest mysteries may be hidden in plain sight, unclaimed, unstudied, and untouched by time's official record. But nothing truly stays buried forever. To the ancient Egyptians, the Sphinx was far more than a mere sculpture. It was a powerful symbol, part guardian, part divine entity, part enduring mystery. Possessing the body of a lion and the head of a man, the Sphinx represented the fusion of raw strength with profound wisdom, physical power gracefully tamed by the royal mind. It served as a cosmic sentinel, strategically placed at thresholds where the divine realm intersected with the mortal. The most renowned, of course, is the Great Sphinx of Giza. Towering 66 feet high, it has vigilantly guarded the plateau for over 4,000 years, perpetually facing the rising sun, watching over the sacred tombs of pharaohs. Its precise origin remains a subject of intense debate. Some assert it was constructed by Khafre. Others argue it may be considerably older, its face perhaps recarved and altered over time. So what would it profoundly signify if a second Sphinx, hidden, water-worn, and potentially even older, truly exists just miles away? It would fundamentally change everything we understand. No known records explicitly mention twin sphinxes at Giza. Ancient texts remain conspicuously silent on this matter. But in later Greco-Roman traditions, there are mentions of powerful guardians positioned in perfect balance, flanking sacred spaces. In Egyptian architecture, symmetry is sacred. Temples frequently feature twin statues, twin obelisks, twin avenues of lions. Why not twin sphinxes? Some researchers contend that the so-called underwater Sphinx might not be a copy, but rather the original. A prototype, a pre-dynastic version later replicated on a grander scale. If true, it suggests that the fundamental idea of the Sphinx originated not from dynastic builders, but from a forgotten culture whose myths were carried forward, adopted, and subsequently refined. And if this monument genuinely predates written history, it may not be bound by pharaonic ideology at all. Its true purpose could have been astronomical, profoundly ritualistic, or even purely commemorative, marking a pivotal event, a cataclysmic flood, or honoring a forgotten deity. The lion shape itself is no mere accident. In ancient Egypt, lions symbolized the horizon, the metaphorical gate of dawn and dusk. A sphinx facing east perpetually watches the rebirth of the sun, eternally. To carve one was to permanently freeze that sacred act in stone. Now imagine one carved before the pyramids, perfectly aligned, diligently guarding, patiently waiting. It would not merely rewrite history, it would profoundly redefine the entire mythos of Egypt itself, not as the genesis of civilization, but as the last resonant echo of something even older. And the fact that this powerful symbol might be sleeping beneath water, all the more fitting for a silent guardian of lost worlds. As whispers of the underwater sphinx spread further across the world, a quiet yet profound divide has emerged, one that runs deeper than mere sediment or stone. On one side stands traditional Egyptology, cautious, meticulously structured, and firmly rooted in established academic consensus. On the other, a growing community of independent researchers, alternative historians, and curious minds who firmly believe something extraordinary is being overlooked. Mainstream scholars adamantly insist on verifiable evidence, peer-reviewed studies, rigorous stratigraphy, undeniable inscriptions, and precise radiocarbon dates. Their concern is not unwarranted. Egypt is replete with natural rock formations that bear an uncanny resemblance to human or animal shapes, and misidentifying them can regrettably lead to widespread misinformation. Archaeology, after all, demands extreme caution. The past is fragile. It cannot be reconstructed once irrevocably broken by careless hands or reckless media hype. But to others, this caution has unfortunately devolved into complacency. Independent investigators, many of whom are trained scientists or engineers from outside the conventional archaeological field, argue that the underwater sphinx and similar anomalies warrant deeper, unbiased study. They point to high-resolution satellite images that reveal unnatural symmetry, to LiDAR scans that detect rectangular foundations hidden beneath layers of mud, and to erosion patterns that appear shaped not by chaos, but by deliberate design. They also question the potential political motivations behind the pervasive silence. Tourism dollars flow primarily through well-trodden, officially sanctioned monuments. A new sphinx, especially one that directly threatens the accepted historical timeline, could significantly disrupt Egypt's established narrative and official authority. The fear, they suggest, is not of a hoax, but of having to fundamentally rewrite everything. Books, documentaries, podcasts, and conferences now regularly feature the intriguing underwater sphinx. It has become a potent symbol of hidden history, serving as both a rallying cry for further investigation and a cautionary tale against dogmatic thinking. Supporters passionately call for open excavation. Detractors vehemently warn against pseudoscience. The elusive truth, as always, is lost somewhere in the middle, buried beneath competing voices as dense as the Nile's silt. The divide isn't merely academic, it's deeply emotional. It speaks to how we choose to approach the past. Do we trust only what has been definitively confirmed, or do we courageously follow the tantalizing hints left just beyond our current grasp? The underwater sphinx forces that fundamental question into the open. It's not just a rock or a relic. It's a profound litmus test for how curious and open-minded we are truly permitted to be. And as long as it remains unexcavated, both sides will continue their fervent arguments above a monument that speaks nothing, yet might ultimately change everything. There's something profoundly haunting about a mystery concealed in plain sight, especially when it bears the regal face of a lion and stares up from the mud with ancient, silent wisdom. The so-called underwater sphinx near Giza may or may not be real, but its captivating pull is undeniable. It stirs something deep within us, a powerful yearning not just to discover, but to profoundly remember. Because deep down, the story of a forgotten monument taps into something far older than archaeology, the intrinsic human sense of loss. We have always lived alongside ruins. Cities crumble, languages die, civilizations vanish beneath waves, sand, and ash. We look to the past not merely for answers, but for our very identity. Who were we, truly? How far back do our intricate stories stretch? And what have we inadvertently forgotten in our relentless rush toward perceived progress? If the underwater sphinx is indeed real, if it was meticulously carved by human hands long before recorded history, it transcends being a mere relic. It transforms into a powerful voice from a chapter of human existence we didn't even know existed. A poignant marker from an age when people may have understood the stars differently, honored the earth more intimately, or possessed a rich mythology we can now only vaguely guess at. Some believe it belongs to an advanced prehistoric culture tragically lost to a global catastrophe, a theory often dismissed as fringe. But regardless of whether that is true, the emotional gravity of the possibility remains. To imagine a monument carved long before the pyramids, subsequently submerged by rising waters, and then completely erased from collective memory, is to confront the profound fragility of civilization itself. And perhaps that's precisely why the story persists. It reminds us that time is not always linear, that empires are temporary, and that even solid stone can disappear if the river flows long enough. But more importantly, it reminds us that the age of discovery is far from over, that Earth still holds profound secrets not yet chronicled in textbooks. In an era defined by instant answers and pervasive global data, the underwater sphinx is a rare and precious thing, an unanswered question, a tantalizing possibility, a profound mystery not yet definitively solved by drones or algorithms. And whether it ultimately proves to be a natural rock formation or a forgotten monument, it already possesses immense value because it compels us to wonder if the past is far deeper than we had ever conceived, to wonder if myth indeed holds buried memory, to wonder what profound truths lie just beneath the surface, patiently waiting for someone to listen. The underwater Sphinx of Giza, whether meticulously carved or naturally formed, whether officially confirmed or widely dismissed, remains precisely where it has always been, beneath the surface, beneath the mud, the water, and the immense weight of time. It bears no identifying plaque, no name, no spotlight, and yet it speaks softly in the profound absence of answers. For every magnificent monument we have successfully unearthed in Egypt, there are countless others still buried, still patiently waiting. Some are too fragile to be uncovered without risking their destruction. Others are irrevocably lost to the shifting courses of the Nile, drowned beneath layers of silt and deliberate secrecy. And a select few, like this one, lie in plain view, ignored not because they lack importance, but because they pose questions we are not yet prepared to answer. Perhaps that is precisely what makes the underwater Sphinx so powerful. Not its colossal size, not its immense age, but its profound silence. It forces us to directly confront the limitations of what we confidently claim to know and the inherent discomfort of what we might have persistently overlooked. In truth, it may never be officially excavated. The complexities of politics, funding, and deeply ingrained tradition form walls taller than any ancient tomb. But that does not render it irrelevant. Quite the opposite. The monument's very obscurity has transformed it into a mirror, reflecting not just what lies buried, but what we collectively choose to remember and what we conveniently choose to forget. It also serves as a potent reminder that history is not a closed book, definitively written. It is a living, evolving puzzle, scattered across landscapes and shorelines, patiently awaiting a shift in tide, a change in thinking, or a brave question to respectfully unsettle the accumulated dust. Perhaps one day the water will finally recede, and its full form will majestically rise, paws, face, and all. Perhaps advanced radar will finally confirm what myth has long suggested. Or perhaps the mystery will forever remain, passed from generation to generation, like a timeless whisper between ancient stones. But whether it proves to be a true monument or a mere mirage, the underwater Sphinx already serves its greatest purpose. It powerfully stirs the human imagination. And in a world often drowning in overwhelming certainty, that gift of wonder may be its greatest contribution of all. Because perhaps the most ancient things are not just buried in sand or lost to time. Maybe they are buried deep within us, within our innate need to explore, to remember, and to believe that somewhere out there, beneath waves or vast deserts, the past still breathes and still patiently waits to be found.